Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katy Spada. Gertrude, thank you so much for having me on. I'm currently located in Seattle, and my story starts, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm the third born of 5 children, the only girl. I have 4 brothers. My mother had 5 pregnancies in 8 years. So we're all very close together in our age, which means there was a lot of competition for resources, to be honest. We were always kind of trying to compete for parents' attention or for each other's, but being the only girl was kind of a unique situation in that I never had any hand-me-downs. I usually had my own bedroom and bathroom while my brothers fought over those. And we're a very tight-knit family. So we very quickly moved from Cleveland, Ohio out to California in the 3rd grade. And I primarily grew up in California. My oldest brother was very much the math, science-minded engineer. So in order for me to kind of stand out and be more different, I decided to focus more on the arts. I was very into playing the piano and dance. I danced ballet, tap, jazz, and cheerleading. So those were really my focus areas, even though I was just as talented in math in school as my brothers. But I decided that I wanted to pursue music as my passion. So I started teaching piano lessons and decided to major in music and went to school in Northern California at Dominican University. Majored in piano, was getting bored with one major, so added on a business major and a psychology minor. And my goal was to open up a music school that would provide lessons to people that can't normally afford individual instruction, because it can be a very expensive endeavor, and I thought music education should be accessible to everyone. But around my 3rd year in school, my dad decided to leave my mom, and I saw my mother had been a stay-at-home wife for her whole life, and I saw how financially devastated that was for her, and I realized I was on a very similar track of having somewhat ambitions with the music school, but not necessarily from a financial resilience standpoint. And I kind of vowed then that I didn't want to be super reliant on a man. So when I graduated school, before continuing on with my education, I wanted to see the world. I didn't have a passport. I'd never been outside of the country. So I joined the Peace Corps, and I was sent to Mali, West Africa. And that's really where my life took a big turn. I focused on international development and starting a micro savings bank, and really enjoyed the life of the Malian people and their pace of life, and just really, really beautiful. So I extended my time there, stayed about 3.5 years, came back and got my MBA at Thunderbird School of International Management in Arizona, and joined Intel afterwards doing corporate finance. Very shortly met my now soon to be ex-husband, where he was working for Amazon in Seattle. So we moved to Seattle, got married very quickly, got pregnant, and kind of really lost my focus in where I wanted to go and what to do. And just, it was not a very healthy, happy marriage or relationship, and was just really focused on raising my daughter. And then a few years later, I had my son, and really just kind of survival mode. When we had our second child, he told me he didn't want to go back to his job. He wanted to quit and launch a startup. I wasn't really fully agreed, but he did. So then I was also the primary breadwinner, raising the children, and just became incredibly stressed out. This was also during COVID when we were all really locked down and isolated. And it just became a very kind of very challenging time. And knowing that the relationship was never super helpful, I started working with a therapist and life coaches and just trying to figure out what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And kind of along the same time, so husband is actually from India. So we were very much celebrating all of the Indian holidays, particularly Diwali. And my daughter, when she was about 4 years old, asked me for Diwali pajamas, and they didn't exist in the market. So that was kind of the moment where I'd always had a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit, but that was the moment where I decided to take the leap and start something. So I started the business, and really about maybe 9 months later, also decided to end my marriage. So it's been a very kind of tumultuous road of being the primary breadwinner for my kids, being the primary role model and parent for my kids. Also then starting a business that is celebrating their South Asian heritage, and leaving a South Asian marriage. So there's been a lot of kind of change and tumultuous decisions along the way. But it's also been very exciting. I recently rebranded the business, and it was kind of this very exciting moment. The day I was launching the rebrand for the business is also the day that he moved out. And I was very conscious in not letting the divorce be a time of negativity or despair as something bad, but more of a step into the life of that I want to create. So having those two things happen on the same time was really that sign of this isn't about something, destroying something in my life. It's about creating something more beautiful and moving forward, and really being able to show my kids and my daughter that you don't have to, even if you make a wrong choice in life, you don't have to just sit and settle with it. There's opportunity to pause, reflect, reevaluate where you want to go in life, and take those steps to create that new life. Yes.
Absolutely awesome, Katy. Thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. It's just fascinating how each time I speak to women who have gone through very traumatic experiences but have found ways of reinventing themselves, especially after divorce, it brings with it a certain amount of resilience that actually helps you to move forward in a strange way. But let's go back and just unpack a little bit about your relationship, and what was the turning point that led you to actually leave your marriage?
Mm-hmm. There were multiple points along the way where I felt like this isn't it. This isn't happiness. I think working with a therapist, I really realized that I was living in a constant state of anger and fear, and that I had trauma in my body. I was starting to have a lot of health issues. Being a dancer, I always had like a lot of mobility and flexibility, and that was like completely going away, even though I was continuing to dance. So I could feel that there was like this trauma being held in my body. that I could never like feel joy or happiness when he was around. And even when he wasn't around, there was always like this fear of, when is he going to come home? What is he going to say? What is he going to do? Like, there's just this control. People would ask me, like, what are your plans for the summer or the next 5 years? Do you plan on Seattle? And I could never answer. I had no more plans. There was no more vision of life. And so it came to a point where I realized it was honestly suicide or divorce. I was already dead inside. And so was I going to continue being dead at the age of 40, or was I going to take this huge leap and change? But there was a moment that gave me permission that it was the right choice. Learning about, I watched an interview with Dr. Ramani and Dr. Shafali. Dr. Ramani had just published a book titled "It's Not You" on narcissistic personality development. And watching their interview was such a light bulb moment. I thought they were talking about my life. And I thought, oh, wow, it's not me. This isn't something I can fix. Like, it's not another marriage counselor that I need to go to, or it's something else that I need to learn to be a better wife or partner. That this is not, this is not a marriage and a person that I can fix. And so learning about that was the freedom that this was the right choice. This was the right path forward. And now I have, kind of role models and a playbook of how to heal myself and how to protect and heal my children as well.
Wow. Now, how did you rebuild your sense of self-worth during the healing process? Because a lot of women struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. I have to say that I'm still in that process. I know one has been taking control of my health. About a year before I moved forward on the divorce, I made a commitment to my health goals to kind of regain where I was pre-pregnancy. So that was actually very healing, to finally lose the pregnancy weight, to start running again and doing half marathons, which is something that he was never supportive of me ever leaving or running or doing anything. So kind of taking that power back, feeling good in my body was one thing that really helped. The other thing, I think, when, going through the parenting and having weekends where my children are not with me, which I had never had before this process, realizing that I do have friends in the area and reaching out to that community for support and being seen as a person and an individual and not just a mother of so-and-so, that has also been very helpful. And then lastly, really building my business has also been incredibly helpful, because that's given me the confidence in my skill sets and in what I'm in, my passions, that I am a valid human being, which, suffering from narcissistic abuse, one of the things they do is they really tear you down into making you feel like you're nothing. So finding these different avenues, people in the business, to help build me up again has been incredibly helpful.
So what would you say to someone who's facing narcissistic abuse, who feels trapped?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so hard. Since making the decision, I found other parents, other women in my community that are going through similar things. Some are leaving their husbands, some aren't. And for one, I do tell them that choosing to stay is just as hard as choosing to leave. It's not, one path is not easier than the other. But ultimately, you are in control of your path and where you are. And I definitely refer them to Dr. Ramani and her work. And there's many other books out there about narcissism. So educating yourself and understanding that the role that you play and what's not your fault. So being able to separate those two things and understanding that some of these things that you're experiencing are not because you've done anything wrong. It is the narcissistic personality.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Now let's go into your business and your entrepreneurial journey. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you are focused on right now and how you stumbled across this business idea. What inspired you to go into business?
Yes, it's so exciting. So my children inspired me to go in business. We always celebrated Christmas with the matching family Christmas pajamas. And so one year at Diwali, my 4-year-old said, "Mama, where are my Diwali pajamas?" and they didn't exist. So I said, let's create them. So I kind of consider myself an accidental entrepreneur, where it was just going to start with these simple pajamas. And now we're expanding into full-fledged matching family and children's apparel. And so, yes, it's been a very exciting journey. I'm super excited about our upcoming Diwali launch this year, which will expand into full family matching for the first time. Our previous collection only went up to size 5T, which a lot of our families were asking for larger sizes for their older kids and even the parents themselves. So I'm excited this year we're doing full family. And then very shortly after, we'll be rolling out some non-seasonal collections that are inspired by South Asian artistry and imagery, but really done with very high quality, ethically produced materials. And so they're very comfortable and soft on the skin, and really celebrating that whole multicultural identity for many kids and families.
I love that. And I guess because you were in a multicultural relationship, this has become quite important for you, especially for your kids. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it's very important to me. I think, candidly, growing up a white American, I always struggled with the concept of like culture and identity and what does that mean? Growing up in California, I was surrounded by the Hispanic community, which they were like these such large family gatherings and such big, beautiful festivals and celebrations. And then joining the Peace Corps, which again, the African communities, also big, large families and beautiful cultural clothing and jewelry and this joy. And then marrying into an Indian family, once again, the big families, and beautiful. So I have this like passion for, these understanding these cultural roots. And so for my kids, I feel like they're so lucky that they have these roots with them. And so I just loved embracing it for them. And even though their father and I are not a healthy relationship, one person does not represent 1.4 billion people in an entire culture. So, and I have so many, I'm part of a Bollywood dance group, and I have so many Indian friends, and I've kind of created my own little community and family for my kiddos. I call them the adopted aunties. So, yes.
That's so good. So what are the common struggles that you see amongst other multicultural moms?
Mm-hmm. Especially a few years ago, celebrating the festivals on like the same level as what you see in the West. So being in the United States in the West, like Christmas comes out, September, October, and then for months on end, we're just inundated with all of it. And you don't have that same level of attention for these other celebrations. And so even just finding things to decorate the home or to clothe the children is always a struggle because we just don't have the shops or the access to things. And so that's one thing that we really wanted to solve for the families, is kind of making the clothing more accessible in a more comfortable way, as well as not being seen as bifurcated or different. It's, a lot of them talk about, here's my Indian ethnic wear, and then here's my, I'm Indian on the weekends and American on the weekdays. And it's like separating these two identities. How can we to show our kids that they can be all of themselves all of the time? They don't have to have two separate closets. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now tell us about your brand name. What does it mean? Where did it come from?
Yes. So Ary Maan is a shortened version of my kids' names, which are Arya and Arman, which felt like way too long of a mouthful to keep the whole name. So, so it came from, and it's really a nod to them because they are my inspiration and my drive and following their journey in life as they kind of define who they are in this multicultural identity and world. So
how are you finding the response, especially from South Asian multicultural families, to your brand? How are you getting the message out there? There's a lot of Indian people in the United States and globally. I'm here in Australia. I lived in New Zealand. people are scattered all over the diaspora from different countries.
Mhm.
But how are you managing to connect with them so they are aware that this brand exists?
Yes, yes. So our response has been so positive. People have been so excited. A lot of the feedback is thank you for creating this. I get a lot of photos of the kiddos, running through the airport or at home and saying like, it's Diwali every day in our home now because these are their favorite pajamas. So, and it's like, why not? And the kids going to school and wearing their Diwali pajamas and then explaining them to their teachers of like what the dia means and how cool it was to have a very, South Asian imagery in a Western context, and just the pride that gave the children. And so we've been reaching people a lot through word of mouth and our social media, but we're really just beginning because there is a huge community in US, Australia, UK, just it's a massive diaspora. Mm-hmm.
That is so true. So what are the biggest challenges that you faced during the early stages of launching your business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many things. One of them, we had a challenge with a manufacturer who just wasn't delivering. We were supposed to have a launch come out this past April and spring, and it just didn't happen. So we had to quickly find another new manufacturer to work with who has been fabulous. So I'm very excited about all the upcoming collections from them. But that was definitely a big transition. When all the tariff information came out, we had a moment of how is this going to impact us? And there was a moment we were going to switch production to China, and it didn't make sense for our story or the quality of the product. So we didn't, and very glad that we didn't now with all those tariffs coming out. And then funding is always a challenge. I've been bootstrapping this. There's not a lot of investment or grant opportunities for product-based children clothing lines. So as much as we apply and put ourselves out there, the reality is it needs to be predominantly bootstrapped, and just the timeline of those cash flows, because there's a lot of investment up front before you can actually start selling the products. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what strategies have helped you grow your audience and build trust with your customer base?
Mm-hmm. Number one is being authentic, remembering, who it is that I want to serve and why I'm serving them. And when I stay rooted in those thoughts, that is exactly the feedback that we get. And yes, and so social media has been the biggest help. Meta ads, even though don't like funding Meta a ton, that actually has been the most help. And then local communities. We've been participating in lots of local events and fashion shows, etc. Mm-hmm.
I love that. So what are your hopes for your children and their connection to their cultural roots?
Mm-hmm. The biggest one is that they feel fully empowered, that they have the permission to define who they want to be. And that doesn't mean taking a box off a wall and it's already defined what that box is. Right? It's like, if I say I'm a woman, that doesn't mean I love to wear dresses and makeup, right? So I get to define what that means for me. And that's what I want them to have as well. They can say, American, South Asian, but they get to define what that means for them. And they're fully empowered to do that. And if they have, in the entrepreneurial sense, that they can feel bold enough to pursue their passions. And then on the relationship front, understanding what positive, healthy relationships look like, and that they don't have to accept ones that are not.
Okay, that's so good. Now, what does resilience mean to you personally? You've gone through a lot. You went through a divorce. You've started a new business. You've got to be a very resilient person to just keep bouncing back and doing what you're doing. What does resilience mean to you?
Yes. At the base, sometimes I just tell myself, just keep breathing and walking. just keep moving. And then when we've got that down, it's like, okay, obviously God has a plan and I'm not done yet. And there's something bigger for me. So take a deep breath and let's think bolder and bigger. And and life is not just about the breathing and walking. It is about that momentum of really living and growing. I've heard a saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. So, always expanding and learning and pushing yourself to go further.
And I do like the keep moving. A lot of times when we get stuck, right, we're looking for big things to do. And sometimes it's as simple as just getting up and going for a walk, right? When you're in that situation where you can't quite figure out what's my next step, what should I do, and breathing. Something as simple as to remember to breathe properly. It's interesting that you bring those 2 points out. And your experience traveling around the world, that must have impacted your worldview as well, right? What was your experience in Africa? I'm always curious when I meet people who've been to Africa. What was your first impression and what did you take away from that experience?
Oh my goodness. It's interesting to look back now that it was a sad day when I realized I had been back in the US longer than I was there. Because when I first came back, I would just constantly talk about the experience. It's so incredibly impactful. I think the biggest one is just realizing how small we are in the world, how much privilege we have in developed worlds. And I really question a lot about what development means for humanity, because, there's an image of, oh, these are the poorest countries in the world. And yet they are so much happier than a lot of us in the West. They get to spend so much more time with their friends and family. And it's honestly such a more peaceful way of life. Whereas, in the US, we're always chasing, how can we pay our mortgage? Are we doing enough? Do we have enough? Trying to keep up. And so it really puts things in perspective. I know, like my house in Mali, we didn't have running water or electricity. And so this is kind of going back to resilience of, it made me realize how little we need as human beings to survive. And I go back to that moment, thinking through the divorce of like, oh, if I were to lose everything, and I think I lived off of $200 a month and I feel better in my body than I do now. So I will still be breathing and moving no matter what happens. So.
Love it. Now, I'm going to take you back to go and meet the younger you, the young woman who was going through a divorce, starting up a business. If you could go back and give her, and maybe another woman who's listening to this podcast right now, 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
I think the first one is to believe in yourself more. You were put on this planet for a reason. Your unique perspective and skill set is a true value. And so not to belittle that or look back down upon it. I think the second would be, you can do so much more than you think you can, to not let yourself be inundated with fear or the tyranny of how. Think of the vision, think of what it is you ultimately want to achieve, and the how will figure itself out along the way. And then I think the third is find the joy and laughter in all the moments. Because I think honestly, that's what life should be all about, is the joy that we bring ourselves and for others. And yeah.
That laughter is medicine. I love that. I love it. Now, because you've built such a unique brand, what advice would you give to women who want to turn a painful personal experience into a purpose-driven brand like what you've done?
Yes. I'd say let that passion, the anger, the pain fuel the creativity, fuel the drive. The pain can feel like a lack of control, and then building something is what gives you your control back in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely wonderful. My last question for you is a bit futuristic, where I'm going to teleport you into the future, and we are going to go and meet the 90-year-old you. And she's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, her dogs, her cats, whoever's with you at the end, right? If you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who's led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her? And she's brought joy to so many multicultural families from Southeast Asia, and they are living all over the world, but have access to this brand that reminds them of home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness. Yes, I'd say I hope you enjoyed the journey along the way, and that you continued to believe in yourself and to support others as you went and bring other people along the way.
Absolutely beautiful. Katy, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. I have your website at the bottom of the screen. If anybody out there is looking for something unique, a brand that is not available all over the world, we have it now. So please go online and support this amazing initiative. It really inspires me because I really haven't seen anything like this, especially here in Australia and New Zealand. You've birthed a very unique brand that I think a lot of people will appreciate and embrace. So thank you so much, Katy.
Thank you, Gertrude.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Katy, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her